Alright, so today we're going to be disassembling this Bass Pro Qualifier reel. This is the PQX10SD. You can kind of see it is used. It's got just a little bit boat rash. It's got some grime on the outside, so we're going to take this apart and we're going to get it ready for cleaning. And so what I want to do is I want to go through the disassembly of this reel. Well, before I begin anything, you always want to make sure that you have the schematics for your reel before you begin. If you're going to take it apart, you need to make sure you have the right schematic. Those are available on. So the first thing I'm going to do is take the nut cap screw off, and I'm going to set that aside. Take the nut cap off. I'm going to use a 10mm wrench to take this nut off. Just thread it. Take the handle off. Take the nut off. And then next I'm going to take this star drag off by backing it all the way off. So I hear it clicking, so I know that there's another mechanism in here that makes it click. So I'm going to set that aside. I'm going to pull the drag washers out. With the clicking mechanism. So you need to pay attention that these two little washers here, if you can see that they are not flat, they're curved, and whenever you're going to reassemble them, you're going to notice when you take them apart that they're facing each other like this on the reel. This is the clicking mechanism that makes your drag star make noise and click whenever you turn in your drag star. So all that's together. So now that I have all that off, I'm going to take the spool tension cap off. I'm going to set that down. And now I'm going to open the palm side of the reel by pulling on this pin. So if you can see that this pin right here is spring loaded. So if you pull that pin, the palm plate should turn. Take the palm side plate out and you should be able to pull the spool out. So at this point I like to take the bearing out of the palm side plate out. Let me zoom in a little bit so you can see what I'm doing. So you can use a small flathead screwdriver, and you can see that there's a retainer clip in here. And what I do is I try to find one of the ends of the retainer clip, and I sort of try to scoop the end of it out, but I keep my finger on it. It's very important that you keep your finger over it because this thing will go shooting out. And then I'm going to go around until it comes out. And I'm going to set that aside. Okay. I'm going to use one of my swabs to pull the bearing out, and I'm going to set the bearing down right here. What I'm also going to do, because I'm going to run this through the ultrasonic washer as a whole part, I'm going to take this pressure plate out and I'm going to wipe that on my paper towel that I used on my tray here, just to kind of try to clean it up. And then next I'm going to use my bearing pin puller to push this pin out. And so I can zoom in, hopefully you'll be able to. So you can see this pin right here. I'm going to use this bearing pin pusher to push that pin out. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use the flat side and I'm going to push it flush. Then I'm going to back it out. I'm going to back it out. I'm going to use this side with a pin to finish pushing that keeper pin out. Now it's important to not bend this. They do make pliers, special pliers to take these out. Boca sells them. That's probably the most widely used ones. But I really like these Bassone tools. Oh, I was out of frame. So I push it all the way out. So then there's that pin. So what I like to do is, because this pin is so small I don't want to lose it, I'm going to put it in between these two pieces of paper towel that I have on my tray. Now I can take this bearing off of the spool, set that aside, and now I'm done with all of those components. So next I'm going to take the handle side plate off, and if this reel is missing a screw here, I didn't notice that before I started the video, but I bought these reels used, so this reel is missing a screw. So I'm going to make note of the fact that I need to order this screw for whenever I reassemble this reel. So to the inside portion of this reel, you can see that there's a screw at the bottom here. There's this screw here, and then there's another screw inside where the spool runs. And so I'm going to take those two screws out first. Line that up so I know where that's at. And then I'm going to take this other screw out. And this screw actually deals with the relube port. So whenever you need to lubricate your reel in between servicing, this is the port that you do. You just unscrew it. You can lube it, put the port back in, and screw it back in. So in order for me to know that that's where this screw goes, I'm just going to put it in a couple of threads. And then this screw's missing, so I'm going to take this screw off next. Oh man. And then from here, the handle side plate should come right off. As long as you pull it off slowly, nothing will pop off, nothing will shoot off. Okay? So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to set this aside for just a second. And I want to take the bearing out of here. So there's a bearing where your spool tension cap goes, and it has the same type of retainer clip as the palm side plate. So I'm going to put my thumb over it part of the way, and then I'm going to scoop that retainer clip out, keeping my thumb over it, and then running my screwdriver along the edge till it comes out. Set that to one side, and again I'm going to use my swab to pull this bearing out. Set that aside. This is what it looks like. I have everything that came out of the handle side on the outside of the plate. I have my spool, I have my palm side plate, and my bearings. This is my retainer clip for the handle side spool tension bearing, and this is my retainer clip for the palm side bearing. So in here is your anti-reverse bearing or your one-way clutch bearing. Usually that can just be pushed through. So that can stay in there for now. So what I like to do next is I take these two springs off. Those springs go on your post. I take the sleeve off that rides inside of the one-way clutch bearing, and when I take it off I see that there's a spacer washer that was on top of it. So I'm going to set that aside here. Next, I'm going to pull this whole drag system off of the drive shaft and drive gear. So I'll take my little flathead screwdriver again, a little tiny one, and I'll take the top plate off, the top metal washer. Then this reel has Teflon washers. And then here's a keyed washer. Here's a Teflon washer. There's another metal washer. And then another Teflon washer. There you go. So, on the underneath of the drive gear, this is a toothed gear, and this engages with your lever arm, your kick out arm, and a washer that goes in between that gear and the drive gear. So I'm going to set all of that aside, taking note what order everything goes back on in. What I'm going to take off next is the pinion gear and the yoke that it sits on these two posts, and I'll just pull them out. You can see just how much grease is on there and how much old grease is on there, black and caked up. So now that nothing else is going to come off or unscrew or fall apart, nothing should fall apart at this point. And for most people, this is about as far as most people will go. But I'm going to go further, because I want to disassemble this reel 100% so that I can run it through my ultrasonic washing machines. So I'm going to take the faceplate off next, which just has 2 screws, one on each side. Set that screw aside. Take this screw off. So those 2 screws are different, so I'm going to take note as to what screw went in where. This actually doesn't look like the original screw. So now that the faceplate is off, you can see that the worm gear is exposed. But what I really want to take off next is the brake and cam system. So this can be a little tricky, but what I like to do is I like to take my small flathead screwdriver again. See if I can zoom in a little bit more here so you can see exactly what I'm about to do. What I'll do here is this screw is inside of the body of the reel itself. So I'll put my screwdriver underneath it. It's going to be hard to see because I like to put my finger over it, but for the sake of the video, I'm going to pry it up to try to relieve the tension there, and then I'll also do it here for the kick out arm. I'm going to take this one and lift it up some and relieve that pressure, that tension. So now that I've done that, I can take these 2 screws out, which hold the retainer plate in. So this screw fell into an awkward place. Set that aside. And I'm setting these screws down next to my pinion gear and my yoke. So again, I'm going to take my small flathead screwdriver and I'm going to use it to start to pry this plate out. Looks like this whole thing wants to come out as one piece. So it'll come out as one piece, but these posts this retainer plate should come off of these two posts. Okay, then next is the cam. That comes off, and this spring was connected to that cam. Set that aside. And this is your two posts. Here's your kick out arm here with your spring attached to it. Now from here, I'm going to take this screw out here so that I can take the drive shaft out. And I'm going to set this next to my drive gear, my drag washers. So when I pull this out, there's a bearing at the bottom. I'm going to pull that bearing off and set that next to my other bearings. And then set this drive shaft next to the drive gear. So all we have left here is the worm gear system. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this cap off and take the pawl out. And this takes a little finagling. I'm going to take, this is what I'm going to do. So here, there's a support cross member here. So what you can do is you can slide this out. And then that'll help you wiggle the line guide. There we go. So there's the pawl. The pawl fell out. It is really dirty. So let's hit it with a brush real quick. Doesn't look too bad. So that came out of the line guide. And then this washer goes in the back end of it. Underneath this cap here. So I'm going to, from here, there is an E-clip. So I'm going to pop that E-clip off with my tiny screwdriver. What I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate it. Now what's important to do with these, because these will go flying, is to put your finger over it whenever you push it off so that it stays there. Take that E-clip off. You're going to have to push this washer so that you can push the worm gear all the way through and then pull it out from the bottom. So we're going to set that down. And when you take this plastic retainer clip, you're going to notice that there is a washer on it here. You need to make sure you keep that washer. It goes underneath the E-clip. We're going to set that aside. And then the line guide comes off. And then the worm gear. And so what you can do is you can push the worm gear from the bottom, and that end will stick out, and you see that there's another keeper pin that lines up with some slots in the gear, plastic gear. You can take that keeper pin out, and I'm going to put that underneath the paper towel with our keeper pin for the spool bearing. So you can take this gear off and then push the drive shaft through and pull it from the back side. It's pretty dirty, so this is definitely going to need a cleaning. So that only leaves one thing left on the reel, and that is the thumb bar. So if you look through the body of the reel, you can see that screw. And so I'm going to use my screwdriver to undo that screw. Take it out. That's the screw. What you're going to have to do here is this bar goes through and holds that thumb bar in place. So you're going to have to wiggle it out. If you're having issues, you can go to the palm side of the plate and use your tiny flathead screwdriver again and push on the plastic bar, and you can push it through. You can pull it out, and then your thumb bar should just come off. This reel has some wear plates, so we're going to take those wear plates off. And then all you're left with is the framework, the middle body of the reel. There's nothing else left attached. And so what we're left with is everything disassembled from the reel. So as I took things apart, you can see here I have the drive gear, all the metal drag washers, all of the Teflon drag washers, including the paper washer that goes in between the kick-out gear and the drive gear. You have your drive shaft, the screw for the drive shaft. This is everything that came out of the worm gear and the line guide in the front. Over here I have this is the thumb bar pieces and the wear plates, and all of this is your brake and cam system here. And then across the front here I have all the bearings that came out of the reel. I have all the screws that came on the outside of the reel, your tension spool cap, your star drag, and everything that was on the outside of the handle. You can see how dirty this reel was just from looking at the back side of that handle. This reel body is pretty dirty on the outside. It's kind of grimy. You can see how grimy it is on this worm gear. See if we can zoom in and show that, and show just how kind of grimy and dirty it is. Not sure how well it's showing up on camera. But that's how you disassemble the reel. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to run this reel through my ultrasonic washing machine, and then when I come back, we're going to reassemble it.